What's up, everybody? This is my first parent webinar. I'm so excited. Actually, this is my first webinar I've ever done. And it might be my first time going live too. No, I've been live like once before, but anyone who's watching right now and you're tuned in, I want to welcome you to the first ever parent webinar from Club Orange, which is the youth ministry at Great Bridge Presbyterian Church. That's where I work right now. I've been working there for going on 4 years. It's been awesome. Now, I started this webinar with the encouragement of my wife. She is busting out stuff all the time. She's writing her photography stuff, which, little plug for her, martial arts studio photography if you want to get some photos done. She's always putting out information and education to help you all become better photographers and better educated on how to get good photos. What I wanted to do tonight was kind of give a little intro to why I'm doing this webinar and how I can help parents. Now, I've only been a parent for about 6 years, which is probably half the amount of time of most parents that I work with. I work with mostly middle school students and high school. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can adjust my... There we go, my focus. Okay, cool. I'll stand right here. That looks better. But I work with middle school students and high school and some college and young adults and parents who are helping as volunteers. But most of my time with middle school and high school students. So these kids are all older than my own kids. I've got 3 kids, a 6-year-old named Olivia, a 3-year-old son Caleb, and a 10-month-old son Noah. And they are a handful. Mostly for Crystal, my wife, because she stays home. But as we begin, I want to introduce this whole webinar with 2 key scriptures. The first one, I'm going to put it here on the screen, is Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, which in Hebrew is called the Shema. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home, when you are on the road, when you're going to bed, when you are getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, a part that I really wanted to focus on was that as you're going, as you're waking up, as you're walking, if that was written today, it would say as you're having dinner, as you're driving in your car, as you're riding your bicycles together as a family, as you're taking a walk around Oak Grove Lake Park. And basically, my encouragement to parents, to families is we want you to talk about the Lord. Talk about your faith all the time. Don't just make it something that happens on Sunday mornings. Don't make it a conversation to and from church, which typically the conversation to church is, you guys better be on your best behavior. You better listen and don't make us look bad. And make sure you don't put anything in your hair or get all that food on your clothes. You know, stuff like that. What we want is your home to be an encouraging, warm atmosphere for spiritual growth, because that's where a lot of it's going to take place. As a youth director, as somebody who works with students, that's one of my passions, and I love doing that. But I can only reach, realistically, a handful to maybe a dozen students by myself, which is why we have a team of volunteers who then are small group leaders for a handful to a dozen students. We need to get smaller so we can make a larger impact. The next scripture I wanted to show you all, let me get it up here, is Matthew 29, 19 through Matthew 28, 19 through 20, the Great Commission. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. We believe as followers of Christ, that Great Commission is for all of us. Anyone who says they follow Jesus. If that is true, then they will go and make disciples. A Christian who has never made a disciple or has never helped someone else follow Christ's commands and obey them is the same thing as... Okay, let me give you this quick story I heard from a friend. He said he went to this Dunkin' Donuts, and they went to the store to get the donuts because they were hungry, they needed a snack. They walk in, they didn't see any donuts on the shelves. They walk up to the lady and say, "Can we get some chocolate glazed donuts?" She's like, "Sorry, we don't have any." "Can we get some raspberry filled donuts?" "Nope, don't have any of those either." "How about just some regular donuts?" "Sorry, we're all out." "What do you mean you're all out? You're a Dunkin' Donuts. You don't have any donuts?" Yeah, surprising. A Dunkin' Donuts with no donuts. That's like a Christian who doesn't make disciples. A Christian who doesn't help others to grow in their faith and bring others to Jesus. That's a Dunkin' Donuts without donuts. That's one that I'm not going to. And that's not one I want you all to be. So we got here these two passages in the Old Testament. God is asking us to share with our kids our faith all the time. And then Jesus tells us in the New Testament, just before he goes up to heaven, he says, "Go, make disciples." And so we believe that disciples are made at home, yes, and we believe they're made at church. Okay? So both places have a role. And we want to take that influence, put them together and work together as best as possible. That's why I'm doing this podcast, because I want to reach out to you all parents, to strengthen your influence and to strengthen our influence in these students' lives. Let me see here. Okay, so as I get into our topic of today's discussion, I wanted to first introduce this book, 12 Huge Mistakes Parents Can Avoid by Tim Elmores. This is going to be my main resource for these next couple of webinars. I don't know if I'm going to do 12 webinars. Well, I'm not even going to get into the first problem today. I'm just getting into the introduction. But keep staying in tune because there's some good stuff I'm going to share. But I'm not an expert at being a parent. I'm getting close to being an expert of being a parent of maybe like 3 and 4 year olds because I've had 2 of those. And now I'm on our 3rd. So maybe in a couple years I'll feel like an expert of 2 and 3 year olds and 4 year olds. But it's all a new journey. And I know for you all it's a new journey too. However, this guy, Tim Elmore, has a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. I consider him an expert. So I'm going to be gleaning from what he says. And I'm going to do some research. And I'm going to look things up to bring you all some information. And just a little side note, this book, I can get more copies and put them in my library, which parents, I have a little library outside the youth room where you can borrow books. I have some more of his books on that shelf. If you want to borrow one, gain some wisdom and knowledge from other people, please do. It's actually right outside of our youth room in the hallway. But today, we're going to start with something called the Over-Functioning Parent Quiz. What I want you all to do is get out a piece of paper and a pen. You'll want to take some notes today. And I'm going to have these questions up for you to check them out, grade yourself as a parent, and kind of determine, am I an over-functioning parent? Do I do too much, too little? Here's the grading scale, 1 through 10, 1 being never, 10 being always. And here we go. Let's get into these questions. 1, when my kids begin failing a task, I try to help them out and prevent the failure. Is that you? 1 being no, I never do it, or 10, yes, every time. Number 2, regarding my children's future, I love them in a direction I'd wish. Wait. Regarding my children's future, I love them in a direction I'd wish I'd gone myself. Number 3, my primary goal is my children's happiness, and that's what I hope they pursue. Number 4, I'm so busy I frequently relax on enforcing our house rules. 5, when my child messes up, I come to their aid and fix the problem for them. Number 6, I want my kids to have strong self-esteem, so I go overboard with praise for them. Number 7, I find that I am unable to build a strong sense of ambition in my children. Number 8, when my kids are struggling, I jump in and do it for them to relieve the stress. 9, I buy things for my children that they want and can't seem to wait for. Number 10, I affirm my kids. I affirm my kids by telling them they are smart or beautiful or gifted. Just a little not misnomer, but a little side note. These are not all bad. I'm not saying if you are really, really high in one of these numbers that, oh my gosh, I'm over-functioning, and that's a bad thing. Maybe you're functioning properly. So this is just to kind of give you a guide and some of the ways that you can improve in some areas. Number 11, I'm so hurt when my kids experience pains or setbacks, I try to prevent them. Number 12, when parenting my kids, I focus mainly on the issues and problems at hand today. Pause for 1 second. I got to make sure this is all going well. Hey, Crystal. Okay, I'm good. She tells me I'm good. Oh, people are commenting. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions. Well, if I get any questions while we're doing this, my assistant, who's my wife and my lifelong partner, she will give me those questions. I'll try to answer them. Oh, wait. No, I didn't want to ask this question yet. So go ahead and answer some of those and see where you are on some of these questions. But I want to ask you, if we're doing so well, why aren't our kids ready for the world that waits them once they leave home? Now I want to share a little bit about my story. I left home. Oh, someone asked me to go back to the questions. Okay. I'm going to... Alright, let's go back to the numbers. Here's the grading scale. 1, never, and then 10, always. Here are the questions. I have to remember that people are watching right now, and so I can't pause it, and they can't pause it because they'll miss something. Okay, so I'll keep this up for a little bit longer, and then I'll move on to the next one as I tell my story. I left home when I was 17. Now remember that number. Remember 17, because 17 is an age that I'm going to come back to where some really interesting things happen. So I was 17 and I left for college. I turned 18 the next month, so I turned 18 in September. But I was 17 when I went to college and when I left from that summer. And I've never lived back at home again. I visited for breaks. I don't consider winter break for like 3 or 4 weeks living at home. Even in the summer, I worked at summer camps, so I was never home in the summer. And I enjoyed being away from home. I wasn't homesick ever. I fully loved my time away at college. I loved my time in the summers at camp. I loved making my friends. And after I graduated, it never crossed my mind, I should move back home. Or, man, I need to go live with my parents. No, I was out. I did not want to go back. Here, let me go to the next questions. All right, 7 through 12 there. And now I've been away from home for quite a long time. I've seen some of my friends go back, and it was for good reasons. Maybe they had to pay off school bills. Maybe they had to take a little transition time to figure out what they really wanted to do. And don't feel like I'm hating on people who went home. It's understandable. However, it's becoming like an epidemic, okay? And I'm going to share some stats with you all in a second. Um, but I did want to ask this question. If we're doing so well, why aren't our kids ready for the world that awaits them once they leave home? A couple of, I think I'm going to share some stats with you all. A full 1/3 of our males between the age 30, or not, between the age 22 and 34 live at home with their parents. A third of all of these people living at home. And for various reasons. Hopefully not to become the #1 player on Call of Duty or Halo. Hopefully they have greater aspirations than staying in their parents' basement playing video games. But that can be something that's happening. In 2000, more than 90% of teens planned on attending college. So that's great. That's actually my second year of high school was year 2000. I graduated in 2003. In 2012, nearly a third didn't even graduate from high school. Of those who went to college, most of them did not finish. The Department of Defense estimates that 75% of young Americans are not even eligible to serve in the military. Why? Because they didn't graduate from high school, or they were obese, or they had criminal records. So what's going on? What's going on with our young people? And how can you all as parents help? My hope is, as we go through some of these huge mistakes, you might be able to catch them before you make them. I know some of the parents who are going to be tuning in have younger kids, and that's great. If we can take this wisdom and knowledge, I'm going to be taking it for myself and applying it, because I really don't want my kids to come back home when we have them leave. Now, we'll prepare them, and I hope that if we prepare them, they will be able to go and go off on their own. And I'm not saying if that happens to you parents that you have failed, but I think there might have been areas in their life that you did fail. Okay, so we all need to kind of honestly look at our parenting. And speaking of looking at our parenting, you've taken that quiz. Interesting little quote I want to read to you all. According to a recent nationwide survey, American parents gave themselves the grade of an A or a B pertaining to how their parenting is. But then, asked about other parents, they gave other parents a D. So we typically see that we're doing well and others are doing bad. It's kind of easy to see the mistakes of others and think, okay, we're doing great. We're doing good. And I can understand that, because there are times where I might look at somebody else's kids and kind of judge that parent and go, oh, they let their kid do that? I would never let my kid do that. And I know you all have done that. I would never let my kid get away with that. But in reality, we do fail at times. And I wanted to read, well, I read some of those statistics that kind of show you, okay, we've got a couple of things going on in our young people that we want to change those trends. And I don't believe that all of those trends are maybe happening in our area, like Chesapeake, because I see a lot of really, really solid students that I work with who have a good head on their shoulders. But then I have been talking to some of the students who they're not sure about the future, and we want to prepare them. So what's going on with our young people? There's a lot of firsts with these young people. We have this word going around that you hear a lot called millennials. That's like the name of basically anybody who's hooked to one of these. A young person who's hooked to a phone, you call them a millennial. That's the name of our younger generation, those kind of born in the later 80s, early 90s, up until in the 2000s. I'm not sure where the cutoff is. If you follow generational trends and stuff like that, that's what they call us. I'm part of that generation, the millennials. However, I left home at 17, so I kind of disprove some of those things. But here are some firsts that I want to tell you all about with these young people. This is the first generation that doesn't need to get information from an adult. They can get it right here. Boom. Got their phone. They got their computer. They can even talk to their peers. And a lot of them spend a lot of time talking to their peers. They can broadcast any thought or emotion to those who follow them. This is the first time kids can have hundreds of friends that they've never met in real life. And they can share their feelings. They can share their thoughts. They can just spew it all out there in the public for anyone to see, which can make them very vulnerable and open to cyberbullying. This is the first generation that has external stimuli at their fingertips 24/7, and that goes back to this cell phone. A lot of these firsts have come because of the cell phone and because of technology. I'm not saying any of this is good or bad. Technology is amoral. It's neither good nor bad. It's how we use it. It's a tool. And a tool in the wrong hands or a tool for the wrong reasons can be bad. They are socially connected at all times, but often isolated. You'll see a lot of people walking around like this, just kind of on their phones. Or they'll be at home and they'll be talking to everybody, but they'll be by themselves and perfectly okay with that. To be physically alone, but socially connected. This is the first generation that will learn from a portable device, and they will learn more from a portable device than a classroom. So think about the future of our education and how that might change because of these devices. This is the first generation that will use a phone instead of a wristwatch, an alarm clock, a wall calendar, a board game, a camera. And I just made this one up myself instead of a friend. So that could be sad if it's true. So with all of this technology and all these things, there tends to be something that happens to parents. They see all of this new stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I protect my children? How do I manage all of these things? How do I look over my kids' devices? How do I watch what they're watching, look at what they're looking at? How do I stay connected to them? And there's this picture that I want to show you all. And I got a helicopter here. A helicopter parent. Is this you? With all these new devices and all this technology, have you become a helicopter parent? And in some instances, that's good because you want to set boundaries. You know, you ask these questions like, should we limit our kids' cell phone use? Should we allow them to use these devices in the classroom? Should I let my kids have Instagram or Facebook, Snapchat? And I can't answer those questions for you all. You kind of have to make those decisions as a family. Should we let our children play outside? Man, I can't believe we're even asking that question anymore. Or these days, can I let my children play outside? Or do I need to make my children play outside more? You can kind of look at their skin tone if they're looking kind of pale, maybe. But because of these devices and all the bad stuff that can happen, this has turned you all, helicopter parents, into this. Turned you into the Apache helicopter. Oh my gosh, you are even more hardcore now. You have placed yourself into every nook and cranny of their life, watching over everything. And I just want to caution you all not to become like that. And I'm going to get into some of the reasons that will not be a good thing. But I want to give a little story right now to illustrate this idea of maybe becoming an Apache helicopter parent and what that can do. So there was a president. Let me give you this guy's picture. President Garfield. I don't know when he was president. I didn't look that up. But he was president, in 1880s. So 1880s, he was the president of the United States, President Garfield. And this gentleman, right here, Charles Guiteau, if that's how you say it, shot him. He was an assassin. He shot President Garfield. Here we go back to President Garfield. He shot him and sent him to the hospital. They caught Garfield. They caught Charles and accused him of assassination, and he was tried and found guilty. But here we have our president in the hospital with a bullet inside of him. He's not dead yet, though. He lived the bullet, but he's just laying there trying to recover. And then here comes our doctor, Dr. Willard Bliss, who at the time was an esteemed doctor. He's working on the president. He has to be a great doctor. So he was sure that the bullet entered into a specific area of the body. He knew where it was. He had to find it. So he began searching for it. I don't know if they didn't have the same medical stuff we do today, but if they had the pain medicine or anesthetics like we have, hopefully the president wasn't awake this whole time. But for weeks, he was trying to recover. He was trying to find this bullet, and he could not find the bullet. He was scoping around, looking here and there, and he was sure it was in one spot. A couple of people offered to help Dr. Bliss. Alexander Bell created this metal detector to find it, and he told the doctor, "Hey doctor, I have this device that's going to help you find the bullet. Let me come give you a hand." Well, the doctor, he was a very prideful doctor. He said, "Okay, well, it's only in this area of the body. I will only allow you to search here." And Alexander Bell was not able to find it. He did not find a bullet. Here comes someone else, Joseph Lister. I believe this is the guy who made Listerine. I'm not 100% sure, but with that name, it sounds like it. But Joseph Lister was doing a lot of research on germs and infections caused by germs and little bacteria. And he was telling the doctor, "Doctor, you need to sterilize and wash your hands and your tools." But the doctor was like, "You don't need to tell me. I don't believe in your magic, whatever, things that you can't see with your eyes. No." So the doctor was using dirty tools and dirty hands to probe around the president to find this bullet. So we have these two men, Alexander Bell and Lister, who were going to provide ways to help. But the doctor was too prideful, and he didn't want to accept any help from anyone because he was sure that he knew what he was doing. Well, a couple of weeks later, 11 weeks, the president died. The president died with a bullet in his body. President Garfield, sorry, you died a slow and painful death with a man using dirty tools searching your body. So, what is the moral of this story? The moral is we need help. And we cannot think that we know everything. And I know you parents, if you're watching this right now, that means you want to learn more. And I want to learn more. This is part of why I'm doing this, because everything I'm teaching you, I'm learning myself. Which this is great because I get to learn these things. I want to be an awesome parent for my kids. And I want you all to be awesome parents. And I want you to be part of the discipleship of your kids. I heard this quote, and I hear every time I listen to the D6 podcast. D6 is an organization that supports the church, tries to resource the church to provide them curriculum, provide them training, and it comes from Deuteronomy 6, like I read you all in the beginning, to train up the children as they should go, to talk about their faith all the time. Well, D6 does a podcast. If you guys want to listen to it, it's awesome. I love it. And at the beginning of each podcast, this guy says, our goal is not to have our kids get a great job, to have a great family, to find a great spouse, to make great money, to live in a great house, to have a great car or a great career. Our goal as parents is for our kids to love a great God. That should be our number one goal. Everything else will fall into place, just like Jesus told us in the book of Matthew. I think it was Matthew 6. Yeah, seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be added unto you. Everything will be put in its right place, in priority. But we need to prioritize God first. Today, our parents are typically taking a path with their children, and I'm going to kind of lay out this path and then share with you what's missing in the path. And after I do that, our webinar will be over, and I'm going to go into with our next webinar with the first mistake. But the path that our parents take usually goes into 6 steps. Let me get that going right here. Step 1, or stage 1, is inspecting. This happens when a kid is born. We inspect everything. Crystal's dad, whenever he would call us, he would ask us, how's the kids doing? Or how's your baby doing? 10 fingers, 10 toes, eyes, ears, and nose. So all those things are in order. If all those things are in order, we're okay. We're good to go. And you're checking everything about your child as they're growing, every little spot on their face. I remember each of our children had these little spots on their face, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? What's happening to them? Is that cancer? Or whenever they would get like a little bit of snot coming out, you're like, oh my gosh, we need to call a doctor. They have a stuffy nose. We can't handle it. And so you're inspecting everything, but then you're also inspecting your kids and kind of evaluating them to the other children. You're checking the other children like, all right, who's growing quicker? Who took their first step? And I can catch myself doing that sometimes. We have some kids at our church who were born around the same time Noah was. And I'm thinking, all right, who's going to do this first, or who's going to do that first? But in reality, we're all a community, and we should be encouraging each other. Because I can tell you what, if you talk to a parent and go, oh, your child's not walking yet? There must be something wrong with them. That's what they're thinking, like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad parent. My kid's tooth hasn't come in yet. You can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about your kid's tooth coming in or when they're saying their first words. So it's important that we encourage each other. Like, oh, your child's doing so great. And that leads us to the next stage in life. Let me find here on my stuff. Stage 2, correcting. Stage 2, correcting. And in this stage, we have a picture of a little 2-year-old kid, maybe 2 or 3-year-old, and they start doing the bad stuff. What do we call this age? Terrible twos. And it's because they're doing a lot of bad stuff. So we hear in the church that we're born with this nature. We call it the sin nature. And it's inherited to every person. You're born with this. And people are like, oh, no way. Like, kids are so good. They're so precious. No. I have seen these kids, 1, 2, 3 years old, purposefully doing something wrong. And they know it. They are testing you. They're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to drop this, or I'm going to, and then they watch you, like, seeing if you're watching them. They know. Oh, they know. They know they're doing something wrong. And it's during this time that our parents can become maybe over-correcting. And if you correct your children too much, then it'll make them feel as though they will never measure up to your standards. So be careful. Like, yes, we need to correct our children, but hopefully those are not the only words coming out of your mouth. Stage 3, protecting. And for protecting, I got a couple points here. Some words. Oh, here we go. Protecting. Is this you? Is this your child? Are you one of those parents who overprotect your kids? Stick a helmet on them with some bubble wrap? I know none of you actually do that, but how funny would it be to see that? Anybody ever see the movie A Christmas Story with Ralphie gets his eye shot out with a BB gun? Well, there's a scene where the mom's putting all the clothes on him, the winter clothes, and the kid walks out like this because he can't even move his arms. That's such a good movie. But kids need appropriate levels of risk and failure in order to mature in a healthy way. So if we protect our kids too much, we're making them soft. And I give this analogy of working out. When you work out, you rip muscles. You lift hard and heavy things. You do hard stuff. And only then will you become stronger. Same with our kids. I want to confess something to you all. I let my kids eat mulch. I let them eat sticks. When we go to the beach, they grab a handful of sand, and when they're going to put it in their mouth, I just let them. I let them eat the sand. Because they're going to learn that sand tastes gross. And I think that's okay. Now, here's a story of bad dad. Me being bad and not protecting my kid like I should have. So, I've already told this to others, Crystal. I was in the backyard sharpening my hatchet, as good dads do. And my daughter was there with me. We're just kind of hanging outside. I want to teach her some stuff about tools. And I'm like, Olivia, this is my hatchet. This is how you sharpen it. I have my little stone, and it's round, and it kind of, you get the edges really, really sharp. And I took my finger, and I just tapped the tip, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this feels nice and sharp. And she's like, oh, let me touch it. And I was like, should I let her touch it? I was like, okay. So she goes, and instead of just touching the tip like I did, she's like, oh, it's, ah! And she cut her finger, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And Crystal was so mad at me. But she will never touch a hatch on the tip again. So was that good, bad? It was probably bad. And hopefully none of you call social services on me. Please don't. Stage 4, neglecting. Not that we are becoming neglecting of our kids, but there are times where we might neglect them. And this is typically during the tween or teen times. And it's not neglecting in a bad way. There can be some bad neglecting, but neglecting as in you're letting them be on their own, doing their own thing, maybe hanging out with their friends. And these are the kids I work with right now. And I can tell who's being neglected at home, like in a bad way, because they can become very clingy at youth group, or they really want a lot of people's attention. And they'll do bad things to get that attention. Too much neglect communicates that we aren't engaged. And it's during this time that you're very confused as a parent. You're like, I don't know what's going on with my kids. I don't know why they're acting like this. They're like my enemy. But they're just testing out the new waters. They're becoming new people. They're becoming little adults. And they need big adults to teach them how to become adults. So actually, parents, this is the time that you need to get closer. You need to draw in more. You need to force yourself into their life. You need to take, dads, you need to take out your daughters on dates. Moms, take your sons out. Teach them how to treat the opposite sex, how to treat each other. And you need to model for them what that looks like. We need to draw closer at this stage because it's during this stage. This is the second part in development where the most development happens. The most development happens in the first couple of years of life, and specifically the first weeks, where your brain is just like, shh, everything's happening. And then again, in middle school, where everything is happening, going crazy, everyone's growing hair everywhere, voices are deepening, and they're talking funny, and they're getting taller, and their feet are bigger, and they're tripping, and they're becoming adults. But it's also where the concrete sets, and their beliefs become pretty solid. So if you taught them nothing before this time, then whatever they have, it's what they're going to believe for a long time. And once they get into high school and on is kind of like damage control, trying to help fix some of the problems. If we can get them in middle school, then we can, it's like the last big power play for us, middle school. Here, let me, stage 5, suspecting. And this is where you as a parent, they're in high school, they're a little bit older, you're really wondering a lot, like what are they doing with their time? Why are they in the bathroom so long? Why are they taking such long showers? Well, probably they're like curious, like what was all these changes to my body? Or maybe they're doing inappropriate things in the bathroom. Probably. And you as a parent, you're like wanting to know what's going on with them. This is where, in this stage, communication is very important, and you need to overly communicate. You need to talk to your kids about awkward things. You need to talk to them about sex. You need to talk to them about dating and relationships. You need to talk to them about the things that are happening in their body, the things their body can do, okay? The things that they can do to their body and what that's going to do to them. So talk about these things, because if you don't talk to them, they'll be talking to their friends who are teenagers going through the same thing, and they're not experts. I'm not saying that y'all are experts, but you know more. They're going to talk to maybe some other older teenagers who might steer them in the wrong path. We're going to go into stage 6, and this is the final big stage of your path as a parent with your kids, and that's the stage of resurrecting. What you're kind of doing during this stage is you're trying to resurrect your relationship with them. The picture I have for you all is riding a bicycle. So this is the stage where you're kind of, the bicycle is like adulthood. You want your kids to ride this bicycle, call it a life. You want to let them go, but you also want to give them enough cushion so that when they go, they can go off strong. But you got to let go. And it's kind of sad that you have to let go, but know that you've done everything you can as a parent to let them go. And my hope is that you will feel confident that you have done well. I moved to the next slide. Oops. So, resurrecting, you're trying to build that relationship, get back into their life, and in a sense kind of be buddy-buddy with them, but then they don't need a buddy, they need someone to continue being a parent. So continue to be a good parent for them. And so what's missing? I shared with you all the 6 stages. Let me go ahead and review those stages again. They are stage 1, inspecting, stage 2, correcting, stage 3, protecting, stage 4, neglecting, 5, suspecting, stage 6, resurrecting, and then finally, what's missing? What's missing is expecting. We need to expect more from our kids. And what is happening right now, our kids are getting stressed out. They're worked really hard in school. They are stressed out because they have a full schedule. They have band practice, sports, recitals, tests, and all of these things, as this is what Tim Elmores says, these are essentially virtual activities. None of these things are real life. We're putting our kids in these stressful schedules of things that aren't real life. Like, real life is not soccer. Soccer doesn't happen in real life. Real life, teamwork is real life, but the game of soccer is not real life. It's a game. When you have a test, tests are not real life. And even when you get out of school, you never really have tests like that again. You might have an occasional, I guess tests are like exams at the hospital, but you'll have an evaluation where people look at your work. And so we've given our students so much, but we haven't given them meaningful work, significant work. And I'm going to share a story in a moment to talk about significant work. But let's go back to the age 17. I said I would come back to the age 17. 100 years ago, 17-year-olds were leading armies. They were working on the farm. They were learning trades as an apprentice. So there was a lot expected of a 17-year-old. You were basically an adult. You're becoming a man or a woman. And you're probably starting to make a family. 100 years ago. Now, our kids are like, all right, time to go to college and party and play video games and meet a bunch of guys or girls and go crazy. That's not adulthood. everything that happens in college, not everything, but stuff that happens in college is not real life. We need to prepare our kids for real life. High school did not prepare me for real life. College, there were some things in college that did prepare me for real life, but I learned a lot of real life from being out there. And I try to surround myself with mentors because I knew they would give me sound advice and wisdom on what I should and should not do. But if I didn't have those mentors, I have no idea where I end up. So this story. We've got a dad who finds out his daughter is dating this kid who he does not really like. He is this gothic punk kid who doesn't really share any of the values that he has tried to teach his daughter. So he talks to his friend like, what should I do about my daughter? She's dating this guy and I don't really approve. And the friend told him, well, what kind of story are you living? You know, she's looking to you for a story of something exciting. And what kind of life are you living at home? Because if she's hanging out with this guy, maybe he's telling her a more exciting story. Maybe he sees something in this guy that you aren't offering. Maybe you're not offering any significance. So this dad thinks about that, and what he decides to do, this is really cool. He decides to start helping this mission in another country. An orphanage. He basically adopts an orphanage, and they begin to help build an orphanage. They raise the money to build an orphanage, and they talk about planning a trip. And the daughter and the son and their kids really get into this. They decide they want to be a part of making this orphanage because they want to help someone in another country. They have work that is significant, that's something greater than just themselves. And they plan a trip to go to the orphanage and help out the people. And one day while going through all this as a family, she tells Dad, hey Dad, I dumped that boyfriend. He just really wasn't for me. He didn't have the same qualities that I would want. And like, wow. He was at home living a better story, and his daughter caught on to that and decided, you know what? I want to live a story like this. And if I'm going to be with somebody, they better be on board with something just like this. So parents, we're coming to the end, and the next time I speak with you all, I hope to do it in 2 weeks on a Thursday night. Thursday night works well for me. Hopefully it works for you all. But we're going to go into the first mistake. And mistake 1, maybe even get into mistake 2, depending on how much time I can do this. We won't let them fail. So I mentioned earlier about failure and letting our kids get hurt. Failure is important because we learn so much from failure. Are you one of those parents who will never let their kids fail? Are you the kind of parent that if your child fails a subject, you go to the school and blame the teacher because of their failure or blame others? I think it's going to be good next time we get together to learn about failure. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you were able to receive something from today's word. I want to go ahead and pray for this time, pray for you all. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for sharing wisdom with all of us. As parents, we need your wisdom. We need your guidance. And we need help. I'm not going to pretend for one moment that I know what I'm doing all the time with my kids. It is a day-to-day experiment, and I need you. So please guide us as we learn, as we challenge each other, as we grow together. We want to go and make disciples, and it's important that we make disciples of our own children. And I thank you for your Son. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, you guys have a blessed evening.